my mom gave me some really good advice, and I was surprised that she was the one to give it to me. But she was just like, the next time that you date somebody who was raised like you, who has the same, who aligns with some of like the wants and needs that you have, and don't make it all about the artificial things that society has taught you to want. And so I was like, all right, I'll try that. And literally, she probably told me that in November, and I met him in January.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley, and I'm so happy you came by. The Queerly Blax Show aims to normalize the everyday existence of Black, LGBTQIA+ individuals through an interview-style series with regular folks like you and me. So every week, a new guest shares their story and unique perspective on their existence as an LGBTQIA+ individual. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe, download, set your reminders to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley. I'm here today with a very special guest, Mr. J. Penn. Jay, tell the people about yourself.
What's up, y'all? My name is J. Penn, obviously, and I am a singer, songwriter, producer, scriptwriter, all things under the umbrella of entertainment. I would like to say that I do.
Dope, man, dope. We're going to get into all that, but you already know, before we get into that, it's the Queerly Blax Show, so it wouldn't be right if we understand your queer story, man. We got to get to it. So talk about the first time you encountered your sexuality.
I was in kindergarten, and there was, this is gonna sound so creepy because I'm older now, but there was a little boy that I was in class with that I found attractive, and of course at the time I didn't really know how to define it as being that. I just knew something was a little different about the way that I approached our friendship, or what he looked like from my POV. And so that was kindergarten, and I noticed that just kept happening between kindergarten and like fourth grade. There were just like these guys in my class that, of course, I was friends with, but like I said, there was something bubbling under the surface a little bit more than just that. And then probably by the age of 13, I was actually able to identify that, okay, I may be gay, but also because the environment that I grew up in was not conducive to being that, I kind of wrote it off as being a phase. Like, okay, this is just something I grew out of. Didn't really worry about it for real until high school, when I finally acted on all the thoughts I had through like kindergarten up until that point. And the first time I ever had sex, I was 15, and it was with a guy. And at that point, you internally start freaking out because now like everything is like solidified, and it's not like you can put it in a bucket of, oh, it's just a phase anymore. And so dealing with all of that internally, and then somebody tried to out me in high school, being 15 at the time. That was not great, because it came across my parents, and of course I had to talk them off the ledge and like, reassure them that no, I'm straight, and there's nothing to really worry about. And then there was silence in that area for another 4 years until I got to college, where I met like my first love. And I even kept him under wraps for like the first 2 to 3 years of college. And then I brought him around my family my junior year, and there was a bunch of raised eyebrows, of course, because, Black folks be peeping. And so after that, I graduated from college the next year, and I remember coming home from graduation, being in the kitchen with my mom, and we're just like catching up on things, and she randomly throws out there, she's just like, I haven't heard you mention a girlfriend in a while. And I was just like,
you're like, Mom, really?
Right. And I'm just like, yeah, because I haven't had one. She was like, it's probably at least been since high school. I'm like, probably because that was the last time I had one. And she braces herself, and I'm watching her as she's going through all these motions. And she braces herself, and then she finally goes, so what, you just don't like girls anymore? And I looked at her for a while, and I was like, I guess not. Not ever really saying I never really liked girls. It was all like a scheme that Todd set up.
Right.
But no, I was just like, and once I said that, like it's funny, everybody played the role that I expected them to play in my life once I finally came out. So my mom, of course, there was like the hysterical tears at first. And then she kind of like came to, and it became about protecting me more than anything. My dad, I really thought it would break our relationship because our relationship was not always the strongest in the first place. And to some degree it did break it, but now my dad just chooses not to talk about it at all, as if it's like not a real thing, but our relationship in some odd way has gotten better, even though we don't talk about it. I guess because we don't talk about it, it'll stay better. But that's been something I've been.
Compartmentalization.
There you go.
No.
My brothers were extremely supportive. They, were kind of like, this is not news to us kind of thing, and we love you, we support you kind of thing. And everybody else just kind of fell into place at some point or another within the last 10 years. So that's my coming out story. A lot more depth to it, but we'll just scratch the surface for now.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Chicago.
Nice. Oh yeah, Chicago's a nice, large population of Black people in Chicago for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of those places where men are like, their stereotypical like roles and looks for genders.
Yeah.
And when you kind of don't fit that description outside of just being Black, because we know how our families, view that most of the time, but just being, Chicago's one of those places where, you have men who like, you had the Detroit right there with all the, Ford and, GM. Yep. And like, men have a very specific, historically have a very specific look and feel. And then, so, the LGBT community obviously being looking very different, faced with a lot of different things. Were there other like gay people when you were growing up that you saw, or like images that you remember, people in your neighborhood or that you interacted with?
Absolutely. And they were all shunned by the community. And I will never forget, there was this dude that lived right up the street from my house, and he was probably one of the first trans women I ever saw in my life. But of course, at that time, not only was that not a normalized thing the way that it is now, everybody talked shit about him. And he went by the name Peaches, and that was a whole joke that ran through the block. And he would wear handbags and wigs and things like that. And he just wanted to live his life. Mm-hmm. And nobody could seem to let him do that with him.
What up? It's your host, Ashley, and I'm interrupting this podcast to ask, are you following us? Have you downloaded the podcast? Are you subscribed to us on YouTube? If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on all platforms, Queerly Black. I'm going to let y'all get back to the show. Peace.
Parameters of block 1 through 5 kind of thing. And at the time, of course, because I'm ignorant to where the world is going, you join in on the laugh so that you don't look as obvious in your own gayness. Yeah. And so looking back on that and thinking about it, like I feel so bad for what he probably had to endure from everybody within the vicinity. Then outside of him, of course, there were other gay guys within like my class, like elementary school on up. And they usually fit like the more feminine mode. And so I always had a hard time really figuring out where I fit in on the spectrum of being gay. Because yes, there are feminine parts to me, but for the most part, and I think I said the same thing to my mom when I came out to her, I'm just me. I just so happen to like dudes. Like nothing about me has changed. I'm still the exact same person that you raised. And it's not even putting on a front. I am who I am. And I don't feel like I fit into any one bucket of being a gay Black man or a gay male in general. So that was really hard for me to like navigate my way through that. Like, where do I fit in on all of this?
Yeah. Did you play sports and stuff like that?
No, I was always a creative. Mm-hmm. Like anytime I played sports, was just to force that narrative a little bit more. Now I was good at track. Like I could run for sure. But even that became boring after a while. It just did not fulfill me the way they creative endeavors did.
Nice. So when did you start being creative? Was that like something you did from really young, elementary?
Yeah, basically like before I did all the things I do now, like I remember painting was something that I truly loved to do, regardless if I was good at it or not. Like it just brought me joy. And then I think I wrote my first song at the age of 10. And because I've always been obsessed with music, like music has always like literally been my lifeline. And so I would listen to all the greats of the 90s, of course, and then I would take my time and like dissecting their lyrics and picking apart the pieces that I loved, and then trying to create my own lyrics around what they've done. And then I just kept going from there. And released my first EP when I was 21. And then I moved to LA at 26. And when I moved out here is when I realized that I was good at more than just writing songs. And so I started, trying to write scripts, and that turned into me creating 2 web series. And, it everything in my life led up to where I am now.
Yeah, no, that's dope. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm in LA too. For you, was your art ever associated with your sexuality in terms of how people identified you? So like feeling like, oh, he paints or he does all these things that are not basketball.
Yeah, of course. Growing up
how
in
are
the
you
city,
able to just like, as you answer that, like how did you continue to just push forward in something you loved, even though when you're growing up being gay has this negative connotation, but this is something you love? And how did you just kind of, reconcile that for yourself as you got older?
Yeah, so no, for me, I never associated my creativity with my gayness. To me, it always felt like 2 separate entities. But yes, growing up in a city like Chicago, there were not many other boys I could look at within like my class and be like, oh, I can identify with him, or he reminds me of me, or he has the creative like flair like I do. And so anytime they saw me put that on display, it was like, of course, jokes like ensued shortly after that. But surprisingly, I never let that stop me from doing what I wanted to do. Like I remember being in 4th grade, becoming a part of the talent show and getting up on stage in front of like the entire student body and singing a Drew Hill song. And of course, shit talking happened after that, but I didn't care. Like my creativity has always like been a huge part of my identity. And there was the one thing that I could hold on to and say, yeah, that's who I am. And I do that very well. Like I felt like I never did sports well. I never was like the ideal student. I pulled off C's and B's at best. But my creativity and like the talent that I always felt like I had in me was the one thing I could cling to and say, oh yeah, I can rock that shit. Like 100%, I will score all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's dope, man. That's super dope. So now you live in LA.
Yeah.
From Chicago, from one expensive city to another. But talk
Right.
about you moving from Chicago to LA as a creative, and how you've navigated that journey, because obviously, a lot of people are able to come here but not able to stay here because of, it's a very different place. Number one, it's very expensive, it's very big, you can get sucked in a million different ways, just depending on how, focused you are when you get here. But talk about your process of moving from Chicago to LA.
Yeah, I love Chicago because I started to feel like I was falling into this rut of get up, go to work, pretend like I give a shit about work while also trying to like chase other dreams. But there was no real sense of community amongst the creatives in Chicago. And that always affected me because it's like I want to do all these great things and I don't want to do them alone. So like, where do you go? And so LA was never even on my radar. Like I would have said New York was on my radar before LA ever was. And then I just started seeing, I think after I graduated from college, it started that rise of like the influencer. And so I graduated from college in 2012. And so YouTube was popping then. You got to see all these people who were like starting to build that influencer persona that we now know as being an influencer. And a lot of those people were in LA, and that inspired me. And I'm just like, okay. So it seems like all the creatives flocked to LA. So I tried for 3 years in a row to get a job in LA so that I could just at least secure a bag and not be out in LA broke, because that was never an option for me, like to come out here and sleep in cars and couch surf. And no shade to anybody who does. It just was not the journey that I wanted to take. And so I finally got a job. I moved out here, and it was a complete culture shock. Even though there is a huge sense of community amongst the creatives out here, it's such a slaughterhouse. Like everybody's stepping over each other to get to one thing, and then you got the people who claim they do things but don't really want to do the work when it comes time to do it. And so you really gotta find your tribe, number one, people that you can trust and people who are reliable and all those things. And so you just gotta I had to get through the weeds of it all for the first 3 to 4 years, and I hated LA. I hated it so much because I was struggling, even though I had a job. I was staying in apartments that I would never have stayed in before, real rundown kind of shit. When I did my first web series out here, I literally had to scrounge up money from everywhere just to make it happen. I still, to this day, I don't know how I was able to pull that together and make it work, but it came together. And yeah, it was just a struggle train for the first 3 to 4 years. And then
what was that process? Because imagine a web series, you got to find people, you need videographers, you need light, I don't know, what all the elements, but what that first project in a new city, what were some of the steps that you had to take in terms of networking and finding people to help you? And then how did you know, cost wise, how much it was going to cost and all of that?
So the process probably started with me just being in the right places at the right time. I moved out here not knowing anybody. And then I started doing with the first few years I was out here, I did these little meetup groups with other creatives and going to mixers and things like that. And one of my best friends to this day in LA, I met through a mixer. I think it was called More Juice. And so meeting people there and then hearing those people talk about their journey and talking about how they did their first production or their first whatever the case may be, and hearing them say little tidbits oh, I used X, Y, and Z to cast my people. Then I would go and check it out, and I would start trying to do that as well. So it moving out to LA, if you are a transplant from anywhere, the key to getting everything out of the experience that you want is being open to going to these things and being communicative with other people. If you are not a verbal person, somebody who really is what's the word I'm looking for?
Extrovert.
There you go. If you are an introvert, you're gonna have to flip that real quick coming out here, because you thrive on being an extrovert and meeting other people and picking people's brains for things and not being scared to ask for favors or advice. So that was a process for me because I've always been an introvert. And so I had to establish a new sense of me, and tap into a side of me that I never really wanted to tap into. I always had a really secluded amount of friends, and I prided myself in that, and I still do. But there's nothing wrong with being vocal about what you want, what you're doing, what your goals and aspirations are. Just be careful with who you share it with.
Yeah.
Did
you always know that you wanted to just create, or did you also want to act, in terms of
I knew I always wanted to be
dream?
Right. I think I always knew I wanted to be a singer more than anything. And like I said, the possibility of me being an actor and a screenwriter didn't even come into play until I moved here. And I took a stab at writing my first script after getting fired from a job at a production company. I was working as a media planner for a major production company out here. I'm gonna keep it cute and not say the name.
Mm-hmm.
And I got fired, and I was just writing down. I caught myself writing down notes to kind of get my feelings out about the experience, everything I went through during my time there. And I think one of my friends was these notes are interesting. You should try writing an episode just based on these notes in general. And I'm that sounds time consuming. And then one day I just tried it, and I created all these characters that were based off characters I worked with and these scenarios that were very similar to what I'd experienced. And I let somebody read it, and they were just yo, this is dope as fuck. You need to keep going. And so I created 6 episodes for the first season of my web series. The web series is called MAD, and it's an acronym for More Appreciation Deserved. And it basically documents my entire time at this production company as one of 2 Black people in the marketing department, and what that looked like for me. And I will never forget one of my first experiences being there. My first day at that company, they sent me to a screening for Birth of a Nation. And I was just out of all the movies on the slate, why y'all sending me to see this? And it's not even a movie that I'm planning media for. So what's the whole point? And they were just like, oh, well, you know, we just want your POV on it. And I'm like, you want POV as what? As a Black man or as just like a moviegoer? Well, you know, it's a particular kind of movie and we want to see like kind of how you feel about it. I'm just like, okay. And it was that kind of shit that just kept like spiraling as I spent more time there.
What up? It's your host, Ashley, and I'm interrupting this podcast to ask, are you following us? Have you downloaded the podcast? Are you subscribed to us on YouTube? If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on all platforms, Queerly Black. I'm going to let y'all get back to the show. Peace.
And so, yeah.
Interesting.
That's how I stumbled upon my first script.
Yeah, wow. But those make the best experiences. Just like, you know, you write music too, you create music, so you know, like people write the best music out of tragedy. Nice. You don't want the artist to keep going through that, but you want the music. So it's like, well, I think you're a sacrificial lamb here.
Facts. I've legit fallen out with people over including them in my artistry in some way or another, and I'm never the kind of person that's like gonna blatantly call you out, like name, address, number type shit. But like, you know, a situation when you hear it. And I will never forget like an ex of mine I wrote into the web series, and we fell out hard. And my whole thing was like, yes, I used our story within this, but also you didn't seem to mind putting me through the shit when you were putting me through it. But now It's a problem because everybody else gets to kind of like see it on display.
Because a hit dog a holler.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about dating. So you've been in LA for a couple years. You're in a relationship?
I am.
Yes. How long?
It's been 3 years.
Nice. So since LA?
No, I've been in LA for 6 years at this point.
Yeah.
And so I met my current partner in 2019, like right before the pandemic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So how before your relationship now, one thing I like to talk about is I mean, I've been in a relationship for a really, really long time, but a lot of people are curious about like dating in big cities.
Yeah.
And so you know, LA, New York, those are probably the two biggest ones that come to mind. Chicago's also a really big place. But how was dating in LA when you first came here?
Oh, trash. That's actually, so I'm in development for a series that I just recently wrote called Love and Us. And this now documents like not only my love story in LA, but all of my like guy friends and all the shit that we've like talked about as a collective, and just the trash ass experiences that we've had. And so, yeah, you meet a bunch of different types of personalities. Like you meet the guy who doesn't really know that he's a fuckboy, but has all the fuckboy personality traits. And then you meet the guy who is blatant about being a fuckboy and wants you to be on board with him being a fuckboy. Then you meet the people who don't even really know what they want and on any end of the spectrum. And so you come across so many different types of personalities, and most will not align with what you want and who you are. But right before I met my current boyfriend, my mom gave me some really good advice, and I was surprised that she was the one to give it to me. But she was just like, the next time that you date somebody who was raised like you, who has the same who aligns with some of the, like the wants and needs that you have, and don't make it all about the artificial things that society has taught you to want. And so I was like, all right, I'll try that. And literally, she probably told me that in November, and I met him in January. I just opened my mind up, and I stopped being so selective about what I wanted. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna go into this and look for somebody that I can identify myself within.
Yeah. That's dope. That's good advice. So I think you know, people need to hear that.
Yeah.
How to go back real quick about your artistry. So your music. You are one half of a group?
I am. So aside from that, I have my own like solo stuff that I do, and that's all under the name of J Penn. And then recently, me and my best friend, who I've been friends with since I was 18, He just so happened to move out here like 2 years after I moved out here, and we have been trying to like put together a project since we were 18, and it just never seemed to come to fruition. Like we were either too immature or we didn't really know what we wanted to sound like. We just let a lot of roadblocks get in the way. And so within the last 2 years, we decided to finally like sit down and try it again. And we ended up coming up with a 7-track EP called Anyone Who's Ever Loved. And it really just, it's a really good storytelling of like the ups and downs of relationships and like love in general. And so I think that's why we ended up naming it Anyone Who's Ever Loved, because literally anybody who's ever been in love can relate to the subject matter on the project. And so I think the project starts with like the end of a heartbreak, and then that flows into like the joys of rediscovering yourself and the self-love of it all, and then finding somebody and applying all those new things you found out about yourself to that relationship. So it's just like a journey of love.
Dope.
And I forgot to say the name of the group is Royal Blue.
Yeah, that's dope. I love it, man. I love it. I had 2 more questions for you. So one,
okay.
You like music, you're an artist. So I have that. Find out, what is your theme song for your life? So if you had a theme song for your life, what would it be?
I would have to say Fantasia, If I Were a Bird. And I say that because like the song is just beautiful. Like, let's start there. But the story of the song is just like, if I could just fly away from all the things that keep me down and burden me and make me feel lower than where I should be in my life, I would fly away from all those things and I would just prosper. And I feel like a lot of times in my life, I've struggled with like confidence and what people are saying or what other people are doing, just being worried about all these things. And I think I'm now at the point where like I can fly above all of that. And so that song, I don't know, when it came out, it really resonated with me and I felt everything that she said. So I feel like that would be the thing with my life.
Yeah. No, I feel it. And my last final question is, if you had advice for someone who's going through their own queer journey, what would it be?
Put you first. Like, everybody's gonna have something to say, for better or worse. But nobody's opinion of you matters more than you. And so you gotta move forward through all things in life with care and concern for yourself. Like, how do you feel about who you are? I think that's the most important thing, is people will try to make you feel like shit for just being who you truly are.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, put you first, and everybody else will either follow or fall the fuck off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there it is. Drop the mic on that. Tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at DJ Penn. And all of my music is on streaming platforms under J Penn and or Royal Blue. And Royal Blue is spelled RYL.BLU.
Got it. BLU. Got it. All right. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
We in LA together, so we definitely got to link up.
Absolutely.
Y'all already know it's another episode of the Queerly Blax Show. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll catch y'all on the next one.